Good afternoon, everyone. So, in the last class, we were talking about how the Merkle Patricia trees work. So, the reason why we have a tree, either a Merkle tree or a Merkle Patricia tree, is because we need to store data in Ethereum. Okay, you are generating thousands of blocks every day, if not every day, every week, and there is so much data on your blockchain that if you have to like go back to a transaction, what is the easiest way to do it? So what these Merkle trees or Merkle Patricia trees do is they provide you with a kind of a summary of the transactions that are present on the blockchain. Now, when you're talking about the Bitcoin blockchain, you are creating a Merkle tree only for the transactions. And the reason you are doing so is because there is only one kind of transaction happening on your Bitcoin blockchain, which is transferring of BTC from one account to another. It is a payment system. You are making payments, and those transactions are the transactions that need to be stored on your blockchain. Now, when you come to Ethereum, you know that in Ethereum, there are transactions where you're transferring some amount of Ether from one account to another. And there are transactions also from contract accounts that are used to like initiate a contract or make payment for smart contracts, etc. Okay. So data on Ethereum blockchain is stored in the form of tree data structures. And that tree is called a trie here, TRIE, trie data structure. So before going ahead, let us like, if you think about it, it is completely sensible to store permanent data like the mine transactions and temporary data like the account balance to be stored separately. Now, a lot of transactions keep happening on the like on the Ethereum blockchain. Your transactions that have happened, they are the permanent data, that is the immutable data, and that needs to be present on your blockchain. But your account balances, the state of your blockchain, that keeps changing. You have contract account, you have externally owned account, the interactions that happen on those account, that is like a temporary data. Your account balance is your temporary data, because as soon as you make a payment, that say data changes. So what Ethereum does is Ethereum makes use of tri-data structure to manage the temporary and permanent data. So temporary data like the account address is stored on the state trie. Okay. The temporary data like the account balance, or you can say the number of transactions that you have made, all of these kind of data is stored on the state trie. It is not temporary, but it gets updated. All right. You are making transactions, your contract is getting executed, and because of the execution of a contract, some new amount enters your account. So, ephemeral data or temporary data is stored on the state trie. All right. So, here you can see we have a state trie. And then again you hash and you get the state root. All right. Next, the confirmed transactions. The transactions that have been confirmed, the transactions that have been recorded, those are stored on the transaction tree or the transaction trie. So Ethereum what it does is it keeps both temporary and permanent data separately. That is, it is using separate data structures to store the temporary and permanent data. So as mentioned, Ethereum stores and manages data using a data structure which is known as the trie. And there are three types of trie on the Ethereum blockchain. We have a state trie, we have a storage trie, and we have a transaction trie. All right. And you must know that there is only one state trie, and that is global state trie in Ethereum. State trie is global for all, it gets constantly updated. That is, it contains the key and value for every account which is present on the Ethereum and the balances of that account. Next, we have a storage trie. Storage trie means this is a data structure which will store every contract data that is present. So every Ethereum account has a storage trie. Whatever operations, whatever data you store on your storage on your account, that is present on the storage trie. And then we have a transaction trie. Transaction trie means that Ethereum block will contain some number of transactions. All right. So every block contains transactions. The order of the transaction is based on the order in which the transactions are added to the block. Okay. So transaction tree can also help you like understand the particular transaction, how one transaction occurred, then this transaction came into the block, then this transaction was added, the order in which the transactions are verified. So important thing to note here is, though we have these tries, though we have these trees, we are only storing the root node hashes. All right. We are only storing the root node hashes. So every block will have some fields. It will have nonce, it will have the previous hash, it will have the timestamp, it will have the counter. And along with it, it will have a state root, it will have a storage root, and it will have a transaction root. Previously on blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, we only had Merkle root hash because we were only storing transactions. But here in the Ethereum blockchain, we will have three root hashes, one for transactions, one for storage, and one for state. So this is the different type of hashes or different type of like data, how data is stored on your Ethereum blockchain. Next, we'll talk about a very important concept in Ethereum, which is known as the gas. Now, we know that Ethereum is a blockchain. It is the second largest cryptocurrency in terms of like market capitalization. And Ether is the internal cryptocurrency. So every time, you can say, Ether is used to maintain your Ethereum network. It is the native cryptocurrency associated with the Ethereum platform. So Ethereum is not just limited to make payments. Now, as we have previously discussed, one coin of Ether can be subdivided into different subdominations. So one Ether can be subdivided into different denominations. So if you look at the slide here, it gives you the denominations of Ether. So there are several denominations here. You can look at the unit names. We have Y, we have KY, we have MY, GY, T, PY, and finally Ether, which means one Ether is equal to 1 and these many number of zeros, 18 zeros after 1. So this can tell you that Y is the smallest denomination of Ether. Y is the smallest denomination of Ether. Okay. And if you like look here, the Y's also have another name given next to them. So these names are also used in Ethereum community, and such names have been given to Ether denominations to honor some famous personalities who have made significant contributions to the development of cryptocurrency, such as Szabo, Finney, all of these. So one Ether is equal to 1000 Finney. So you need not remember this. The only point here is that Ethereum ecosystem is very vast. It is not just used for like transferring some amount from one account to another. It is also used for the execution of smart contracts. It is also used for running the network. How is Ether used to run a network? Let us see that. So the thing to remember here is nothing on Ethereum is free. You want to get your transaction executed, you want to get your smart contract executed, you will have to make a fee, you will have to make a payment to the miners of that network. The network being the Ethereum network. All right. So in Ethereum, there is a very important concept of fees. Every computation that occurs as a result of a transaction will cost you a fee. And the fee that is paid to the miners is called gas. Okay. So gas is the unit used to measure the fee that is being made. That is, gas is the unit of calculation that indicates the amount of like ether you will be paying for a particular transaction. Okay. And then we have another concept which is known as the gas limit. And gas limit will set, that is, okay, this is the maximum amount of gas a user is willing to pay for performing some transaction. So what happens exactly on Ether is that if you want to get your transaction executed, there is a transaction fee. If you want to execute a smart contract, we know that smart contracts don't execute on their own. They are executed in response to some transaction. So even to like send money or to initiate a smart contracts, you have to execute transactions. And every transaction on Ethereum has a transaction fee. Transaction fee is calculated in gas and is paid in ether. So you can say gas is the fuel of the Ethereum network. And this is used to conduct transactions. It is used to execute smart contracts, to launch the distributed applications, as well as pay for data storage. Any doubts up till now? Any questions? Okay. So I'll continue. So as I was saying, that every transaction, whether it is transferring of money, execution of smart contracts, everything will cost something on the Ethereum blockchain. And that cost is called the transaction fee. Transaction fee, when you calculate it in the terms of gas, and when the payment is made, it is made in the form of ether. All right. So gas has two components. It has a limit and it has a price. Okay. The price of the gas is the amount of GY that the user is willing to spend on each unit of gas. So let us see this with the help of an example. It will make it more clear. So whenever you want to like execute a transaction, the network states that this gas limit should never be less than 21,000. If it is less than 21,000, your transaction will automatically get rejected. Then we have a gas price. All right. Gas price is up to you. You will decide this. Gas limit is decided by the network or the miners, but gas price is decided by you. But what if you decide to pay only 1 GY instead of this 20 GY that is present? So the thing that happens on Ethereum is that the higher you are willing to pay for your transaction, the higher is the possibility that your transaction will get accepted sooner. And the combination, that is multiplication of gas limit into gas price, will give you the transaction fee. and that fee is paid in ether. So it is clear that it is calculated in gas, but the payment is made in ether. And very interestingly, there are ether stations present on the internet. We have ether stations that tell you the trending, like what are the trends today, how much should you pay to get your transaction confirmed, or what is, like, if you want your transaction to be confirmed in say 20 minutes, this should be your gas price. If you want your transactions to be confirmed in like 40 minutes, this should be your gas price. So let me show you that. 1 second. So if you look at this tab here, it shows you a ether gas station. So what exactly do these platforms do are that here they tell you what is the recommended fee in GY. So you have to make your payment in GY only, and they will tell you what the payment should be. If you want your transaction to be confirmed in less than 2 minutes, you have to pay this much amount of money. All right. If you're okay to get your transaction confirmed in 5 minutes, you have to pay this amount of money. And if you want your transaction to be confirmed in like 30 minutes or so, this is the amount of like payment that you have to make for the transfer. Now here it shows in the form of say dollar value, but there are certain other websites that will tell you the fee that you have to pay in terms of GY. So let me open that up for you. Yes, here. So here you can see that it shows that what latest block has been mined and what payment, the complete payment that was made, combining all the transactions, the complete payment that was made to mine that block. All right. So here it shows the base fee. The current fee is this, all right, for a block. And the suggested fee is this. But when you're talking about transactions, they will tell you if you want your transaction to be confirmed in like normal time, which is less than 5 minutes, you will have to pay this much amount of fee. If you have to get your transaction confirmed fast, as in 1 to 2 minutes, you will have to pay 1.5 GY. Fastest is 13.1 GY, which means that it will confirm 1 to 2 blocks, and lowest is 1 GY, which is less than or equal to 30 minutes to confirm a transaction. So this, what do you call it, your gas price, which is mentioned in GY, is decided by the network. Here it shows the trend that, okay, if I want my transaction, this is not accurate memory pool. All right, this is not the accurate price. This just gives you an estimation that these estimates are based on the current condition on which your network is operating. That is, it is just an indicating, it is indicative in nature. Okay, so if I want my transaction to get confirmed, if I want that my transaction should get confirmed in say 5 to 7 seconds, I will choose this. Okay. But if I'm not in a hurry, I just want my transaction to get confirmed, I will choose this 1 GY here. All right. So this gas price is decided by the miners of the network. The more that you're willing to pay, the faster your transaction will get confirmed. So this is the gas price. And then you have to set the gas limit. okay, that you're saying that, okay, this is the amount of money that I'm willing to spend, but I will set a limit that you are giving a minimum and a maximum, that I will not spend beyond this point. So this gas limit is set by the user, you and me, we will set this gas limit. Okay. So if you look at this here, we have a gas limit and we have the gas. All right. So this gas here, this gas price here, I will set it depending upon how fast or slow I want my transaction to get confirmed. I am setting this value, but basis the trend that is present in the Ethereum network, that I know that if I want my transaction to get confirmed in, say, the fastest time, I have to pay 13 GY. So already I'm paying 20 GY. So I will get this transaction confirmed in the fastest amount of time. Then we have this concept known as gas limit. Now, sender will only set this gas limit. When you're creating your transaction, when you're specifying all your fields, you will have to set the gas limit. Okay, and this gas limit is the maximum amount of gas that a user is willing to pay for performing this action or confirming this transaction. And the network says that this value should be a minimum of 21,000. So this is a parameter that has been set by the network. So let us see how gas and payments are made. So if you look at this first uh, what figure here, the first one, you can see you have a sender and you have a receiver. Okay. And you want to send a transaction from the sender to the receiver. So I need to start the transaction. All right. So I say that I will start the transaction with a gas limit of, say, 250. All right. So the transaction gets started. Several operations are performed during the transaction. Say 50 gas is used, then gas of 30 is used. Then finally, I have at the end of transaction 170 gas left. So this remaining gas is sent to me. So this is just indicative in nature. Suppose this value was not 250, it was 50,000 as stated by the network. So this is your maximum limit that you are setting. The network will use as much as it requires and the remaining gas will be sent back to you. All right. So the sender sets the limit and the gas price for each transaction. And for example, here, if the gas limit is 50,000 units and the gas price is 20 GY, then it means that the sender is ready to spend 0.001 Ether for the execution. And the higher the gas price the sender is willing to pay, the more important the transaction is in the Ethereum network. And the reason is because miner will be getting a higher reward. And after a transaction is completed, all unused gas is returned to the sender's account. Now, if you look at the second figure here, you started a transaction, all right. Initial gas was 250. There were lot of operations performed and you ran out of gas. You did not have enough gas to complete the operation. So now what will happen is your transaction will be considered an invalid transaction and it will be reverted. It will be considered invalid and the transaction execution will be stopped. All right. Transaction execution will stop. So in case the sender does not provide necessary gas to execute the transaction and the transaction runs out of gas, it is considered invalid. So in this case, what happens is that transaction processing is aborted and any state changes that occurred, they are reversed. All right. So what will happen is transaction has been initiated, but it will not record success. It will record transaction failure. That transaction will show that a transaction was attempted, but it failed. And what do you think will happen? Some amount, see, if here you started with this gas, all right, in the begin, like in the middle of the transaction, you run out of gas, all right. So do you think this 250 will be sent back to the sender, or it not be sent back? Anyone? No. The reason it will not be sent back is because your machine, your Ethereum network has already made effort to execute the operations. So if you look at it here, several operations were performed, but since it ran out of gas, the operation was aborted. So since the Ethereum network or the Ethereum machine has already expended efforts to run the calculations before running out of gas, logically, none of this gas is refunded to the sender. Only after execution of a transaction, the remaining gas that the network did not need, that will be sent back. So what you are doing is you are setting an estimate value. All right. So now understand this. We have some operations. Okay. Okay. Let's say call this operation 1. Then we have operation 2. And then we have operation 3. Several different type of operations. Some maybe to say transfer ether, and this will involve verification of transaction, transferring of value, and second operation could be, say, execution of smart contracts. You could execute your smart contracts, and because of execution of smart contracts, any condition can occur. This could involve transferring or payment. It could involve digital asset transfer. It could be, say, will execution. You are executing a will. So different types of operations are there, and each of these operation has a associated cost on the network. If you are executing these operation, each of these operation has specific cost, and this cost depends upon the amount of computation done on the network. We know that Ethereum also works on a proof of uh, work model. Ethereum also works on a proof of work model. So you cannot like you can say like you cannot accurately estimate that if I am executing one transaction, I started with a transaction. Okay, this transaction initiated a smart contract, and because of the initiation of the smart contract, three other transactions got executed. Okay. So what Ethereum network does is it says that you have to pay in GY, but what will be the order that you are ready? Like you're saying you have to pay 20 GY, but you will also have to set the limit. You can say I will set the limit maximum as 31,000, or I will set the limit as 51,000. So this into this will calculate the amount of money or the amount of ether that you are spending, because you are initiating a transaction, just one transaction. But this just one transaction is initiating a smart contract, and this in turn is initiating different transactions. So this is the reason why it may happen that your transaction may run out of gas. And this is the reason why you have to set a larger limit for your transaction to get executed. All right. So coming back to this slide here. So we were talking about the if gas is used and like your user runs out of gas. So your transaction will be set as failed, but your gas will be not returned to you because some work has already been expended to carry out these operations. All right. So we are saying that the gas is not returned. All right. It does not go back to the sender. This money is sent to the miner's address, which was involved in putting all these transactions in a block or executing the transactions. So we know that when a transaction is confirmed, transaction is only confirmed when it is put inside a block. So it is the responsibility of the miner to select the transactions. And since miner is expending effort, the amount of gas that is used is sent to the miner. The miners are expending the effort to run computations, validate transactions. Then miners receive the gas fee as reward. So this is what is present in the uh, 1 second, please. Yes. So this is what is present here. We have a sender. You started a transaction. Okay. The transaction used a gas amount of 50. Then it again used a gas amount of 30. That is, for this operation, it used a gas amount of 50. For this operation, it used a gas amount of 30. And all of this goes to the miner. The remaining 50 plus 30, which is 80, the remaining gas is sent back to the initiator or the sender of the transaction. So this is all about gas and payments. So higher the gas price the sender is willing to pay, the greater the value of the that is the greater the value miner will think the transaction has, and thus it is more likely that the miner will select that transaction. And in this way, miners are free to choose which transaction they want to validate or ignore. And also, because proof of work is very difficult, it is very difficult to find the nonce which is less than the difficulty target. Proof of work has the problem of mining centralization. You have mining pools. So what the mining pools do is they will on their website they will like advertise that if you pay this minimum amount of gas, we will execute your transaction. So this is a drawback associated with all the blockchain networks that work on the proof of work model. So to summarize, every single operation that is executed on the Ethereum network has a fee associated with it. Fee is calculated in gas and it is paid in ether. Okay. Now, next, any questions? Anyone? Okay. So this is finally an overview of how Ethereum gas powers a transaction. So you want to send one ether to your friend. So you initiate a transaction that you want to send one ether, and you also put a gas fee, which is gas price, into the gas limit. So you submit a request to the Ethereum network and you compensate the miner with gas. You are doing your transaction of sending some money to your friend, but since you want to send the money to your friend and miners have the power to like select or not select your transaction, you like put a gas fee, that is you are giving miner a reward for selecting your transaction. So if you give a higher fee, there are higher chances that your transaction will get selected. If you pay a smaller fee, then chances are that it may happen that it may take a longer amount of time for your transaction to be selected for including in a block. So now what the miner will do is, it will again, the thing is, it will club up certain number of transactions. It will solve the proof of work, whatever the problem is, computational puzzle. That is, it uses computational power to execute the transaction on the network. Then the transaction is verified by the decentralized Ethereum network. Only after the transaction is recorded in the block and the block is added to the Ethereum blockchain, only then the transaction is considered a success. And then this one ether is transferred to the user. But unlike Bitcoin blockchain, the chances are that spending money or sending money to like one account to another may happen in less than 5 minutes. It is not real time, but it is more closer to real time than what we had with the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin took almost like the average time was around 10 minutes. But here on Ethereum blockchain, the average time is around you can say 7 seconds. The average time is 7 seconds. But it is also like the problem that is now arising is that miners have a monopoly. They will say if you pay higher, if you give us higher reward, we will include transactions, like we'll like verify and mine transactions faster. So this is how gas is used in Ethereum blockchain. So next we come to Ethereum transactions. So if we talk about Ethereum transaction, a transaction will have certain fields. All right. It will have a nonce. We already know what a nonce is. If you're sending out a transaction, this nonce value will give you the transaction count, that this is your 80th transaction or your 90th transaction. So, and we've already seen that nonce value is used for ordering of transactions as well as to prevent double spending on or anti-replay attack, that is using a single transaction twice. Then it will use the destination address, which is the Ethereum public address of the user to whom you are sending the transaction. Then it will have the value, that is the amount of ether that you want to send. If there is some contract code, if it is a transaction that has been like like not initiated in response to some transaction, if your contract account is initiating a transaction, then there could also be some data that is readable by the contract code. Also, if this is a transaction that is initiating a smart contract, then it can also have some data which is readable by the contract code. How? So if you have a transaction, we'll see all of this when we like study solidity. But for example, assume that if some payment is made, or if say your transaction says that, okay, let us see it with the help of an example. So suppose you have a smart contract here. You have a smart contract, and smart contract says and it will have some public, some Ethereum address, and it will also have a payment. Say it says you pay 6 ether, and the condition can be that date is whatever date. You can say I am randomly taking a condition that date is okay. So this smart contract says that pay 6 ether to this Ethereum address if the date is this. This condition could also be anything. It could be, say, if some like goods are received, or say some transaction. So now if we have a transaction, we create a transaction to execute this smart contract. So as soon as this transaction initiates the smart contract, what will happen is the this payment will be made. So this transaction could contain some data to initiate this smart contract. All right. So transaction can also contain some data. So here we have a smart contract. It says that this is the address. This here is the Ethereum public address to which we want to make the payment. And the payment is that you want to make the payment of, say, 6 ether. Okay. And the condition is make the payment if the date is 25th. Okay. Or it could be make the payment if certain like conditions hold true. All right. So how do you initiate this smart contract? You execute a transaction to initiate this smart contract. And the transaction can have some data which could initiate this smart contract. All right. So each transaction will have certain fields. It could also have a data field. And this data field is readable by contract code, that is our smart contract, and based on this data the contract could be executed. Then we know that we have a gas price, that is the amount of ether that we are willing to pay. We have a start gas. Start gas is the gas limit, that is the maximum gas that will be consumable. And then we have VRS. Now VRS is nothing but it is used to generate signature that identifies the sender of the transaction. So it refers to the public key of the sender and the receiver and the verifier. So this is the, you can say, all the data that is present, or all the fields or the components that are present inside the transaction. And here the data field is of real importance. This data field here is of real importance. And the reason this data field is of importance is because if you have a smart contract, okay, and your smart contract says that you are doing some kind of domain registration, all right. Your smart contract is doing some kind of domain registration like your .com registration or .in registration. So you will get an in-call transaction, and in that the input fields will be domain and IP address. So what I'm saying is you have a smart contract which is doing domain registration. All right. So this will be associated with some Ethereum account, and this will have some Ethereum public address. So you're using your Ethereum public address, and for this Ethereum address, somebody is doing a domain registration. So your incoming data could be your IP address and your domain name. You're giving your IP address and domain name to perform domain registration here. So this transaction initiates the smart contract which will do the domain registration. And the input parameters that it needs for doing the domain registration is the IP address and the domain. Other things are also present, that is, we'll be storing with which Ethereum address are we doing the domain registration and all. So this is a transaction in Ethereum. Now, to like, if you go back here, so we'll not go very deep into this signature values. Ethereum uses a ECDSA, which stands for Elliptic Curve Digital Signature Algorithm, which is used to sign a transaction. You already know that you use digital signatures, and for digital signatures, you have a sender's digital signature, you have a receiver's digital signature, and once the you say the transaction is verified, who verifies the transactions? Miner verifies this transaction, so it will also have a field for verifier, which is V. So these are the fields or the components present inside the transaction. And transaction in Ethereum can be to spend money, that is, these could be to like send some money from one account to another, or it could be to initiate smart contracts or to create smart contracts. And since we can also have different kind of applications on our Ethereum, it can also transactions can also make function calls to like execute some routine. So transactions in Ethereum can be two contracts, that is, to initiate the contract to do something. It could be that a transaction is creating a contract. It could also happen that you are sending tokens between accounts. So, in Bitcoin transactions, you could only transfer money through transactions. But here in Ethereum, you are using transactions not only to say spend money or send money from one account to another, you're also using to execute smart contracts, you're also using to like launch your distributed applications, etc. So this is transactions in Ethereum. Any questions, anyone? Any questions? Okay, so next what we have left is we need to finally see what a block is. So we'll quickly cover block, and then from next class onwards, we'll start with solidity, because you have been given an assignment. I think sir has already uploaded it on LMS. So what we'll do is we'll cover the basics of solidity, and if possible, we'll also have some demo sessions that will help you understand it. So just like Bitcoin, Ethereum will also have a block. Like everything on the Ethereum is stored inside the block. Okay. So we will have a block in Ethereum. Block will have the parent block hash. It will have the, you can say, uh, nonce value. It will have the nonce value. It will have the timestamp, that is, at what time the block was created, and it will have, uh, you can say, gas price, will have gas limit, and it will have your state root, will have your storage root, and it will have your transaction root. So we have already seen that you are creating a Merkle Patricia tree for a state root. Similarly, you are creating a Merkle-Patricia tree for a storage root and transaction root. Bitcoin had just one. Here we have three. One for state, one for storage, and one for transactions. Then we also have certain extra, you can say, parameters, that is difficulty, that is the difficulty target that needs to be solved. And there are five extra fields that are not present in Bitcoin blockchain, which is the one is beneficiary address. Then we have mix hash. We have commerce hash, and we have one field for extra data and one for logs. So let us see all of these fields one by one. First is the parent block hash. So we all know what a parent block hash is. Each block is connected to the next block with the help of the parent block. Then we have a nonce value. We all know this nonce value is not the same as the transaction nonce value. We have two nonce values in Ethereum. The first is used to indicate the number of transactions that have been sent. This nonce value here is selected basis the difficulty target that has been set by the network, the difficulty target that has been set by the network. All right. Then we have number, which is the block number. Here you can see you have a number. I haven't used that field, but yes, there will be another field which is called the number, which will give you the block number. It will include a field called number, which gives you the block number. Then we have the timestamp. Timestamp is the time at which the block was added to the chain. We have gas price. You know what gas limit, state root, storage root, and transaction root is. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of these fields, which are new fields. So let us look at these fields one by one. So if you look at hash, now if you look at this field called logs, so log entry means that it will, like Ethereum allows you to have logs to make it possible to track various transactions and messages. So what exactly does Ethereum allow is that here you can see we have a log. Now, it may happen that because of an execution of a smart contract, several transactions are generated because of the execution of a smart contract. Say hundreds of transactions are generated because the smart contracts execute. So it will preserve the log of all those transactions that are executed as a result of the smart contract. So log will contain that value. Next, we have the beneficiary's address. Beneficiary address sometimes includes the miner's address. It will have the address of the miner who has executed the, you can say, executed or verified and added the block to the blockchain. Next, we have mix hash. Now, mix hash is calculated by combining it with nonce. It is a hash value, and this hash value, when it is combined with nonce, it proves that this block has carried out enough computation. So what exactly it means is, you are saying you were able to find a number which is nonce, which is less than the difficulty target. Now, how will this be verified by other people? So what Ethereum does is it will give you a hash, and when you add the nonce to the hash, you are able to verify whether the correct amount of computation, correct amount of work has been spent in adding this block to the blockchain. Then we have extra data. Extra data is nothing but some extra storage provided in the blockchain, or rather provided in this block if something needs to be added. And next we have a field which is known as the Omer's hash. We will not see this right now. This is a big topic. We'll cover it in next class because we'll have to go through the topic of Omer's. So let us leave this for now. And we have already seen what a beneficiary is, which is the account address that receives the fee for mining this block. So these are all the fields that are present in the Ethereum blockchain. You have the parent block hash, you have the nonce, which solves the difficulty target, you have a number which gives the block number. Genesis has 0. This block will also have some number. You have a timestamp which gives the time at which the block is created. You have gas price, gas limit, and then you have the storage. Storage is state storage, sorry, and then you have the state root, you have the storage, and you have the transaction. Then you have the beneficiary address. It is the address of the miner who will receive the reward for mining this block. Mix hash is used for verifying the nonce that has been computed as a result of the difficulty target. Extra data is nothing but extra storage provided inside the block if some data needs to be stored. And then we have logs, which consist of the log information about respect. Like if we are talking about only one smart contracts, every like audit trail or different history regarding that you can say smart contract can be put inside the logs. And finally we have Omer's hash, which we will discuss in the next class. So I think we'll stop here. If you have any doubts, please ask. Anyone, any doubts? Any doubts, anyone? I am so sorry. I'll upload them today itself.